admit that this is not our area of expertise, so we're so excited to have our guest speaker, Corinne Schell from Marist College, talking to you about this topic. You know, there's a lot of things that are important about the college process and choosing a college, but this is a really important one as well. So thank you all for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Corinne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. How is everybody this lovely morning? Earthquakes, earth drills, and all. As mentioned, my name is Corinne Schell. I am Director of West Coast Division at Marist College. I've actually been at Marist now. This is going into my 34th year. Is anybody here familiar with Marist?
Nope.
A couple of people, yeah. We are actually located in New York, about an hour and a half north of New York City. Private four-year liberal arts school, about 5,000 undergraduate students, D1 for sports. We have a campus in Florence, Italy. We have an amazing learning disability program, lots of support for our students, internships, study abroad, the whole 9 yards. I am a Marist graduate. My husband, my son, my daughter, my sister, my nephew, and I just had a niece who graduated with fashion merchandising and is working in wonderful New York City now. So needless to say, I'm a little bit passionate about Marist. And I do have to say, since you're all here and you are looking for free money, Marist does offer scholarships to Marist Frederick High School, and Chaminades happen to be one of them. So, you know, definitely check it out. But what I want to do for you today is kind of give you an overview of what financial aid is all about. So how many freshman parents are here today? Excellent. Sophomores? Juniors? Seniors? Great, okay. How many here have started the college process? Good. How many here have been to visit campuses? Excellent, okay. And of the ones who just raised their hand, how many of you stopped by the financial aid office at the schools? Yeah, no one. And that's part of the problem. My suggestion to you, I'm going to give you a list of different questions that you can ask the financial aid staff at the schools that your student is looking at. I just think it's so incredibly important to establish a connection with somebody from the different schools. So when you make your appointment to visit the campus, do the student tour, again, make the appointment to meet with somebody from financial aid and have the list of questions that you and your student will be asking. It's just 10, 15 minutes. But the first thing that you want to do is to grab their business card, and now you have a connection within that office. So the first question that you're going to ask, and I'm going to go over a bunch of the different things which will make sense as to why you're asking these questions. And the most important one, do you meet financial need 100%? Especially if you're expecting for the student to receive a fairly generous financial aid package. And the answer to that for most of our colleges and universities is no. We don't have the resources to meet a student's need 100%. And that's where you have to be prepared to see that when you get your financial aid packages and all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute. The federal government said that my contribution is $20,000. It costs $60,000 to go there. And I should be entitled to $40,000. Some schools will give it to you, others can't. So you're going to have a gap in those financial aid packages, and you have to try to figure out how are you going to fill in that gap. So basically, love this little slide. I know it's probably a little difficult to see in the back, but how true is it? Where your student goes off to kindergarten, and they don't want to leave home, and then now we're heading into college, and the parent doesn't want you to leave home, the student. And it's really true. I'll attend a college fair, and I've got my banner, New York and Italy, and a family walks by, and the mom looks down, she goes, too far. And I'm thinking, for who? You or the student? And you know what? It's for the parent. They don't want their students to leave. And I get it. You know, it's an emotional thing for them. So, a couple of topics. What is financial aid? How do colleges and universities come up with what we call as the cost of attendance? And you're going to hear a lot of acronyms over the course of this hour. Expected family contribution, how is that determined? It's otherwise known as the EFC. What is financial need? What are the different sources of financial aid? What is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid? And then the last component is the CSS profile. So that's the college scholarship profile. Those are the two different forms. The FAFSA you will most certainly be filling out if you're looking for financial aid. The profile will depend on the schools that you're looking at. So basically, very simple, what is financial need? 3 sources. It's free money, and I know everybody here would like some free money. The next is the self-help, so that's in the form of a student loan. And no matter what happens, you are never going to get away without having that be part of a student's financial aid package. And then the last piece is earn money. So students have an opportunity to work on campus. A lot of times I do hear, I don't want my student to have a loan. I get it, I understand. However, I highly recommend that they at least, if you're planning on paying the full thing, have them do it in their freshman year. It does 2 things. It provides buy-in because now they are invested into this education, and it also provides them with credit history when they leave school. They would make X number of payments once completed. There's no penalty to pay off that loan, and now they'll be able to buy a car, a house, they'll get a credit card because they have established credit. But again, I highly recommend it. The last one is the work. And again, I do hear, I don't want my student working in their freshman year, they need to focus on their schoolwork. However, we find a couple of things with that. They're earning money, so less often that they're looking to you for some resources. They're meeting people. They're gaining a skill depending on what office they work on campus, which could be anywhere from the library to the athletic department to the admissions office, financial aid. There's jobs all over campus. But it also teaches them time management. They learn how to proportion their time because they've got a lot of different things going on in the course of their week. Students that do not work or not involved, they tend to procrastinate. What happens? They have a 12-page paper due tomorrow and they haven't started. So again, I am a firm believer of employment. So cost of attendance, pretty simple. It's the billable cost. You will receive a bill before the start of school, which will have tuition, fees, room, and board. But there's other non-billable costs that we include in that cost of attendance, which are books, personal, and travel. So for me, I always work with financial aid and I say, hey, my students from the West Coast are traveling cross country several times over the course of a year, so please include that into the cost of attendance, no problem. But again, pretty simple. What is the expected family contribution and how is that determined? That's with you completing that FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid. It probably will take you maybe an hour, hour and a half to complete the whole form, but it's one of those where if you sit in a quiet area like a library and you have all the documentation you need, it should not be that difficult to do. I think people just get very, very like, oh my God, this is horrible, this is like filling out a tax return, but it's not. October 1 is when you can start filling out that particular form, so hopefully some of the senior parents in here right now have already begun that. They're looking for 2 years prior, so 2017 taxes is what they're looking at, so hopefully most people have those tax forms done. And this is going to stay the same regardless of what school you're looking at. 2-year, 4-year, public, private, domestic, international, all of our schools have different costs, but the expected family contribution is going to remain the same. So again, if a school's cost of attendance is $60,000 and you fill out the FAFSA and the government says, oh, $20,000 is your contribution, then you should be entitled to about $40,000 worth of financial aid. Going back to the cost of attendance, one thing, that's going to vary widely because, again, we are all different. And speaking of different, 2 words you're going to hear over the course of the next year is fit, and it's a fit for the student, not necessarily a fit for the parent, but it's also a financial fit. And you need to have a discussion with your student about what the expectations are and what you really can afford to provide in order for them to go to school. So these are basically the 5 major factors that's utilized in the FAFSA. Of course, the biggest piece is the income. Second is the assets that you have, and the assets do not include your home. If you have a second home, that's an asset. If you have rental properties, those are assets. Trust, bonds, savings, those are considered assets. The next one is the household size. So if you are mom and dad and you've got 3 kids, then that's 5 in the household. The number in college, which is your traditional college-age students, so 17 through about 22, full-time. So if you've got 2 of those, then it's 5 in the household, 2 in college. The next piece is the age of the older parent. And this is where it's nice to be older. Because the government feels that the older you are, the more money you should be putting away towards your retirement and not necessarily towards the education. A couple of other things that they do include, we live in one of the highest tax states, so they do take that into account. California, New York are the two highest. And then again, on the right-hand side are those listing of additional assets. Unfortunately, the 529 is considered an asset, so if anybody has that. However, what they'll do is they don't utilize the entire 529. They only calculate out a percentage of that. So,
if you've got a family that's divorced, do they use the custodial parent?
Yeah,
You pick one parent's information, they don't combine the households.
Right, and that's going to be on one of the slides coming up. No, that's important. So basically, again, what is financial aid? Cost of attendance, tuition fees, room, board, books, personal travel, minus the expected contribution determined by the federal government with the information you have provided, gives you the financial aid. So pretty basic, pretty simple. So here, completing the FAFSA. Every student who's applying for financial aid needs a federal ID number. So it's called the FSA ID. On the top, it kind of gives you the link that you can actually go on, apply for that FSA ID. The government is expecting that the parent and the student are going to sit side by side, completing that form together. But we all know what that means, that the parent's going to do it. However, please be incredibly careful when you're doing this, because all too often, we all tend to rush. We all really don't read directions fully, and the next thing, you're putting your social security number in there where their number should be. Now that's not going to match with the federal government, it's not going to match with the school, hence you have a problem. So you just have to be very, very careful and cautious to make sure that when they're asking for the student's information, you're providing the student's information. When you fill out the application to apply for that federal FSA ID, it'll take 1 to 3 days before you receive anything. So just be prepared that it's going to be a few more days before you're going to be able to start the FAFSA. And again, the student needs one, the parent needs one. If you have 2 in college, each of your students need their own, because you're going to fill out a separate form for each of them. However, your ID will be sufficient for both of them. Again, the federal government felt that when families were filling out the financial aid form, that it would make more sense for the tax returns to have been completed. That way you have accurate information. Early decision students would be able to receive a financial aid package, which again would be more accurate than projected. So the government said, all right, let's go back 2 years. The only problem is if you own your own business, or you had a banner year in 2017, but 2018 has not been as good, unfortunately the government, they still want that 2017. You cannot send an attachment, you cannot send a reconsideration, they don't want it. What you are going to have to do is to be in contact with the contact person that you met when you were on campus visiting financial aid. You want to have a dialogue with them, put together a letter for them, asking them to use 2018 income information based on the following. And then you just list out the reasons why. You give them what the income is for 2018, and at this point we're already almost done with October, which just shocks me. But that's what you would want to do.
I've got a question. As soon as you did on online FAFSA, you have 2 questions. Are you the student or are you the parent? Obviously, because I'm the parent, I did the parent section. Does it still mean that my daughter has to do it?
That's what they're expecting. Because again, they want it to be a combined effort, But again, we all know 99% of the time the parents get to do the entire thing, and that's okay. I mean, You're actually going in there as them,
Right.
but you're not supposed to.
Well, as a parent, I'm supposed to.
As a parent, you're supposed to, right?
That's what I did, essentially as a parent, but not parents.
Due to absence, the role of the student will be played by the parent, right? So here, completing the FAFSA, this gets to your question about the single parent household. The information that you're providing on the FAFSA, if it's a single parent household, is based upon the custodial parent. So it is with whom the student resides with. I do hear, well, we split it, it's 50-50. Okay, well then, whoever provides the more support. We split that right down the line. Did we trying to help you? So basically, it should be the custodial parent. Anyway, yeah, the only thing that's being asked for by the FAFSA is the child support that's received from the non-custodial parent. That's the only thing that they're looking for. So the FAFSA information is based upon the custodial parent and the child support that's provided by the non-custodial parent. That's it. Documents needed, again, the federal income tax return.
If a joint return is filed, do both parents need their separate ID?
Well, only one parent's going to fill it out. So
Just one?
yeah. If your students are claimed by the non-custodial parent, that's fine too. Again, it's only based on whom the student resides with, who the custodial parent is. Okay, then the IRS data retrieval tool, which is great. On the FAFSA, there'll be a link. It'll ask you, would you like us to kind of dip into the IRS or into the IRS world? You're going to say yes, and then what's going to happen is they're going to populate the fields on the FAFSA from your 2017 taxes. So that's really a great resource because, again, it provides you with less errors when completing the form. One year I did have a family who had a $500,000 income, yet they put down that they paid $500,000 in taxes, which is not accurate. However, it appears that they have a zero income if they're earning $500, but they're giving back $500. So the student qualified for all different types of financial aid. Then when we got the verification with a copy of the tax returns, we see they didn't pay $500,000 in taxes. They only paid $50,000 in taxes, which meant the aid had to be reduced because they weren't entitled to it. And as a college person, the most worst thing that you can do is take money back from somebody. You know, whether they're entitled to it or not, it's just a really hard thing to do. So anyway, the IRS data retrieval tool allows you the opportunity to pull accurate data from the IRS. Child support received, which would be considered an untaxed income. If there's workman comp involved, that's listed. Make sure you have information about your checking, savings, assets, so that you get a good idea of the amounts that are in there. That's about it. Again, the IRS data retrieval tool. On the bottom of this is a link that you can go in and learn a little bit more information about the retrieval tool. I just feel that it's a really, really good resource, if and when it's working. And now, it fluctuates. FAFSA, how does it work? Okay, so the student and the parent fill it out. It's going to go in two different directions. One is going to go to the student, and the other side is going to go to the college or university. So FAFSA will only allow a student to list 12 schools. You're going to have that information sent to the 12 schools if your student's looking at 16. Well, what about the other 4? When the information is received back to the student, you can pull those 12 off and add the other 4 and hit submit. But if things change within the time frame of when you filled it out to the day that you get the information back, say one of the students has decided they're not going to return to school, you would change the number of college. If you've moved, change the state. So that's just an opportunity to make any type of revision. On our side, it comes to the college and university, but we're not doing anything with it until the student has been accepted. Once they've been accepted, then we will generate a financial aid package to the student. And then hopefully, usually by Sometime in March, students should receive it if they're looking at early action, a regular decision, and then of course the May 1 deadline gives them an ample opportunity to kind of review what they're looking at. Verification, I know at Marist we verify all of our new freshmen. However, after that, the government will choose a population, and then that's what we're going to be working with. It's the students that have been chosen by the government for the verification. Verification can be many different things. They may want to hard copy your taxes. They may question the number in college, so they'll send you a verification of enrollment, which then has to go to your other child's school, to the registrar. They'll verify if the student's full-time, blah, 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 goes back to the school. That's what they consider as verification. Types of financial aid, of course, that gift aid, which everybody would like. And that's in the form of scholarships, which are both merit and academic. Then you have the grants, which are all need-based. When you fill out that FAFSA, hopefully part of your aid package will be in the form of grant. And then the last piece is federal grants, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in one of my next slides. And that's in the form of Pell and SEOG. Again, a couple of more acronyms for you. And then self-help, employment, both need-based and campus employment. And I'll explain the difference between that. And then the last piece is the student loan. And again, no matter what, your financial aid packages all will include a loan. Merit-based scholarships, that's another question that you're going to ask the financial aid person. Is there a separate application that we need to complete for my student to apply for a scholarship? At Marist, all of our students that are accepted are considered for scholarship. If they're eligible, it's part of their acceptance letter. However, there are schools that do require a separate form to be complete in order for a student to apply for a particular scholarship. So you want to make sure you're not missing that. Most of our schools have the philosophy that whatever a student comes into that college with is what they're going to stay with over the course of the next 4 years. So if you've missed that opportunity for scholarship, what's the likelihood that the student's going to receive one moving forward, especially if it's whatever they came in with is what they'll stay with. So you want to ask that question. You do not want to miss out on that particular scholarship. In regards to the scholarship, what is the required overall GPA that the student must maintain in order to keep that scholarship, and do they need to remain full-time? Is there a limit? If you think your student's going to take 5 years to complete their degree, do the scholarships, does the financial aid end after 4? And the answer probably will be yes, it ends after 4. Our expectations are that they can graduate within the 4 years. So those are the kind of things that you want to find out. I know for Marist, we have a 1 semester grace period for scholarships. So if a student, and to renew it, it's a 2.85. If they have a 2.84, unfortunately they lose it for that semester. But with the 1 semester grace period, they keep it. Hopefully they get it back up to the 2.85 or higher. If not, unfortunately, they lose it for that next semester. They do need to get it back up to that required GPA. So those are the kind of questions that you want to ask. No surprises. You don't want to be surprised. Scholarships, these are Marist. What we offer, you need to do your research. You have to check with the different schools to see what they're offering in the form of financial assistance. And of course, that primarily will mean what do they offer from the institution? What kind of money are they going to provide? So again, we do offer scholarship for academics. We are a Division I school for sports, so we do provide athletic scholarships. We have scholarships for choral, instrumental, theater, debate, and then we are close to West Point, so we do participate with Army, ROTC. The next one are the privates. So the endowed scholarships are something that, again, you need to do the research at the schools, check out their financial aid page, look up their endowments. You'd be surprised that there are several freshmen endowed scholarships that you wouldn't even know that were there. So those are basically somebody gives us money at the school. However, a majority of them have stipulations. So one of them could be a $5,000 a year scholarship for a student that's graduating with a degree in communications, journalism major, has to have a 3.5 GPA, show financial need, may have to come from a particular high school. Again, The Chaminade scholarships at Marist are for students graduating from Chaminade high schools. That's going to be in that particular area. The other piece is outside scholarship, and that is, you can check with your company or corporation, their HR department. Do they offer any type of scholarship for dependent students? But say your student applies for a Johnson & Johnson scholarship, and it's for $10,000. They have to complete an application. They may have to show financial need, and more than likely they're going to have to do an essay. And they get that scholarship. More than likely that scholarship is going to be made out to the college and the student. So the college will receive that information, the student will come in, they'll do what they need to do, and then that gets put onto their account. However, if a student's needs have been met 100%, we cannot over-award a student, so what we would do is we would replace the work and the Stafford loan, because that's self-help. We do not want to take any grant money away from a student. So that's how that would kind of fit in there. And again, the outside resources could be from clubs, civic organizations, just it's outside of what the college or university will provide. And then as I mentioned, they can replace the self-help, the loan and the work. More than likely, if the school does not meet the need, it'll just fill right into that gap, so no need to worry. And then I highlight most, because most of them will be made out to both the student and the school. However, there are a handful that $500 to $1,000, they'll go right to the student. You're supposed to notify the school of that, but I say no more. Athletic scholarships, I just put this up here because I just want you to know that the only role that the admissions office plays in that is the coaches will provide us with the student's transcript, and then we will review to see if they are academically admissible, and if they qualify for scholarship. However, this could be different at other schools. The only sports at Marist that are fully funded are men's and women's basketball. All the other sports are given a pool of money, and the coaches have to figure out how to best utilize those resources. So needless to say, they're very eager to see if a student will qualify for some type of academic scholarship. However, if a student is not academically admissible, unfortunately, Coach, we're not going to take them, which is disappointing to some. Here's the grants from the federal government. So the federal Pell Grant, that's for economically disadvantaged students. That's the range of amount that the student could receive for a year. $650 is the least, a little over $6,000 for the highest. So the $6,000 would be for the student that has a 0 EFC. If every one of the students in our school had eligibility, they would all get it. There is a cutoff for the amount of times that they can receive it, but again, every student would get it. The SEOG is a supplemental educational opportunity grant. The only students who can receive that are students that are Pell eligible. So when you get your financial aid package and you notice that your student has Pell Grant but no SEOG, what are you going to do? You're going to reach out to your contact and you're going to say, hey, my student has Pell eligibility, but I don't see any SEOG. Is there an opportunity for my student to get it? And either it's, well, let's see what we can do, or unfortunately, we've utilized all of our resources. But you don't know unless you ask. And then the last one is the TEACH grant. So that is, of course, as it says, for teaching. It's a federal grant. They get $4,000 a year if they qualify. However, if they decide after they leave school that they don't want to be a teacher, that becomes a loan. So it's something that they really have to know deep in their heart that that's what they want to do when they graduate. And then the last one for gift aid is the institutional grants. If your student does not qualify for academic scholarship, I would give the admissions office a call and see if they have any non-need-based grants. So that's basically for students that are not eligible for financial aid, yet they don't qualify for an academic scholarship. Some schools will have an additional resource available, some won't, but again, unless you ask, you do not know. And it probably is not going to be publicized. So every one of our states wants to keep our students in state. Cal Grants are for students that are from the state of California, going to school in the state of California. And yes, there are requirements for it. They have to, of course, show financial need. They have to have a verified Cal Grant GPA, which will be done by the school. And the only thing you need to do is just complete the FAFSA. If the student's eligible, it will be part of their financial aid package. So we have the Cal Grants A, B, and C. On the bottom, calgrants.org, if you want additional information about it, which will have the income that you'll be looking at. But again, have to have a verified Cal Grant GPA, only schools in the state of California, and then again, to learn more about it, calgrants.org.
Just ask a question about Teach Grant. Is there a requirement on how long we need to teach? So for example, teaching that.
Yeah, there would be a requirement, the number of years, I don't know off the top of my head. But if you Google Teach Grant, it'll give you specific information of what fields that the students have to be teaching in, the districts that the students would have to be teaching in, and what the requirement is for the duration. So A, B, and C, again. Cal Grant A covers students for both public and private. So for the students that are going to the Cal State schools, they'll cover up to a little over $5,700. For students that are going to the UC schools, they'll cover up to a little over $12,630. And then for the private schools, a little over $9,000. Minimum GPA of a 3.0, and we do have to have financial need. One thing about this, every year when I have been revising this information, it's either remained the same or it's gone down. So tuitions rise, this either stays or goes. Cal Grant B is for students with a lower income, so they're provided with some resources to help with living expenses and books. For those students that get this, they have to have at least a 2.0 GPA and meet the minimum, the financial income and assets requirement as well. And the C is for students that are interested in some type of vocational certification, associate's degrees. They can receive funds of a little over $1,000 for books and equipment, and then they can receive up to a little over $2,400 for tuition and fees. They have to be enrolled in vocational certification or an associate's degree. Middle class scholarship. This is another opportunity through the state. The cutoff is $171,000 for income and assets for both the student and the parent. Only schools that will accept it are UCs or CSUs. And then some additional information, they have to meet the income and asset criteria. They have to be in good academic standing, not be in default on a student loan, and cannot have been incarcerated. Interesting. And then again, 171,000 max is the threshold. They will give you at least 10% of the tuition, no less than 10%, and no more than 40% of the university mandated tuition. UCs, CSU only.
Again, the assets are not including your house.
No. Student employment, love it. Students receive a paycheck. We kind of went over that. The difference between the work study and the campus employment. The federal government will give each school approximately 65 cents on the dollar. So the institution has to come up with 35 cents on the dollar to pay the student. Employment, campus employment, the institution pays the full dollar. So it's in our best interest that we hire the students that have federal work study. That doesn't mean other students cannot get a job, it's just that our priority has to be the students with work study. If you receive work study in your financial aid package, please know that this does not come off your bill. So if your student was allocated, say, $5,000 for the full year, and you go to a semester school, they're not going to take off $2,500 for the fall and $2,500 for the spring. It doesn't miraculously turn into a grant, and it does not become a loan. Nothing happens to it if they do not work. But if they do work, they can earn up to $5,000 for that year. Federal subsidized and unsubsidized student loan. Right-hand side are the interest rates, a little over 5%, and that does increase every year. The subsidized, the government will pay the interest while the student is in school. If your student is eligible for the unsub, the student will be responsible for interest payments. My suggestion, if they are unsub loans, just give a call to the aid office, find out what the payment would be. If you can swing it, pay it. If not, not a big deal. They'll just take what your interest would have been and add it to the pile. So in the long term, you're just going to pay a little bit more. And I put the student loan limits up here because I think it's important to know that a freshman is 0 to 29 credits. I know that after their quote freshman year, they are moving into sophomore housing, they're living with their buddies, but they have 27 credits. For financial aid purposes, if you're doing a semester school, that fall semester will be a freshman level aid package. Once they get over that 30, then it just automatically goes up to this $6,500. The PLUS loan, parent loan for undergraduate studies, kind of explains itself. It's your loan. It is based on credit. You do have to do the FAFSA to determine the expected family contribution. Fixed interest rate is at 7.6, and your repayments will begin 60 days after the final disbursement has been made. So let's go back to that $60,000 school. Your family contribution is 20. Your need is 40. They gave you 30. You can borrow from this $30,000. So it's that gap of 10 and then your EFC. So you can borrow 30. Just be careful. 4 years of $30,000 is $120,000. It's a lot of money. Private loan, otherwise known as the supplemental loan, it is the student's loan based on credit. First, no 17-year-old is ever going to be approved for a loan. And some freshmen are 17 when they start school. And then what 18-year-old has credit? They don't. So what's going to happen? They need a cosigner. Who will that be? You, grandparents, aunties, or uncles. The one benefit is that after 2 years of consecutive payments, the cosigner gets dropped. But not a crazy fan about this. Interest rates kind of could be fixed or variable. Check with the schools, see what they suggest for the supplemental loan if you decide to do it. My favorite, monthly payment plans. No credit review. There is like a small fee. Probably the max would be $100 a year. But it gives you the opportunity to make payments over either 10 months or 12 months. So say you wanted to do a $20,000 plus loan. Maybe do the $10,000 and do $10,000 in payment plans. Because it might be easier for you to come up with $1,000 a month than $5,000 per semester. And again, there's no finance charge, nothing. So I like that, and that just means less money that you're going to borrow. I do like this a lot. May 1 is the deadline for enrollment deposits. If you're going to do the 10-month or 12-month payment plan, you're going to start paying right away. But that's okay. Some families will not do it, but then they receive their school bill in July, due in August, and they're like, we can't do it. You can get enrolled into the programs. It's just that they will require you to make up for the months that you've missed, and then you'll get back on track. So, great opportunity. And here's our last piece, the profile. October 1, you can begin this. I would check to see at the schools your student's looking at, do they require this form? This form is only used by a college or university to figure out how to best utilize their institutional funds. It has nothing to do with federal, state, Pell, SCOG, Teach Grant, your academic scholarship. They're just trying to figure out how to best use their money. So schools that meet 100%, we can guarantee you're filling this out. So say you filled out that FAFSA, EFC was 20, you're going to fill this out for the school. Your EFC for FAFSA is going to remain the same at 20, but for the profile for the school's money, institutional funds, it may go up to 30, it could go up to 40. So what does that mean? That's less money that that school has to give you, and that's the whole purpose. So again, if the school meets need 100%, you can be guaranteed that you're going to be filling this out. This form actually does require a lot of additional information. Again, October 1, you can start filling that out. There is a fee of $25 for the first school that you have to provide, and then for each additional school, it's $16 after that.
Here's the question, is that only, if you don't do it your freshman year, you're done? It seems to me that you need to do it the freshman year, because if you decide, oh, I'm gonna jump on that boat sophomore year, you're not allowed to. Is that true?
I've not heard that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, not every school, we don't require it, we just use the FAFSA. Some schools do require it. You're going to have to renew these forms every year. Especially if you're receiving money from the school, they're gonna, and they're gonna have deadlines for the forms to be complete in order to give out their
It's
institutional
not
aid.
just for private schools? Okay, so
Oh, yeah. Private schools, more, yeah. I mean, the California states, they don't require it. State universities and other schools.
So this is for
require it.
private?
Yeah.
Got it.
And you can go into Google and put CSS profile schools and give you a list of all the schools that require it. And just see if one of the schools your student's looking at requires it, or more. So going back to the custodial parent, FAFSA only wanted the income information from the custodial parent and the amount of child support received from the non-custodial. However, the CSS profile wants all of the information from that non-custodial parent. If they have remarried, they want their income information. Unfortunately, your home is placed in the profile. So if your home is valued at $1 million and you owe $500,000, yes, they will use a calculation. They're not going to use $500,000 as an asset. They do take into account, that's your home. But they will use your home in this calculation where FAFSA does not. You were able to put down private school tuitions in here as well. FAFSA will not allow you to do that. They feel that there's plenty of public schools in the area. You're going to private as a personal choice. However, profile will allow you to do that. A couple of things that I think are important. Again, you're going to find out, does the school revise their aid packages each year? And what I mean by that, freshmen going in, one in college. A couple of years later, maybe the next year, you have 2 in college. Is that freshman who was first, is their aid going to be increased because now the EFC has gone down? More than likely, no. But again, you will not know unless you ask. And they're not going to look at the FAFSAs and go, oh, look, Joey Smith, oh, there's 2 in college now, let's give him more money. It doesn't work that way. You have to ask. And then you have to remember, too, that the second one, their aid was based on 2 in college, so they probably got a fairly decent aid package. Well, what happens when that older one leaves? That EFC is going to shoot up. So there is the possibility that your student's going to lose financial aid because there's only 1 in college. You need to be prepared for that. No surprises, and that's my purpose here is to provide you with information and questions to ask, but also to eliminate a lot of the surprises. Question?
You said earlier 17 to 22, but grad school doesn't count. Only undergrad.
No, grad students are automatically independent. Yeah, and the family's income information is not utilized for that. So that's not considered. Second thing, if your student receives a scholarship and you want a reconsideration because you've done the research and you notice that $25,000 is the maximum, yet your student received 10, but you feel that your student should get more. You're going to write a letter to be reconsidered, and that goes to the admissions office because, again, financial aid has nothing to do with it. And you're going to ask, hey, my student, blah, 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 involved in this, involved in that. Is there any chance that they could qualify for the higher one? They may ask you to provide other scholarships offered from other schools, just to show verification. And then on the other hand, if you're looking for additional resources in the form of grant, then I highly, highly, highly suggest that when you get the aid packages, that you do not decline, or your student doesn't decline, the Stafford loan and the work study. And I say that because they know who has accepted and who has not, yet you're asking for more grant money. The theory will probably be, if your student's not willing to do self-help, then they're not going to give you any more additional grant money. So have the student accept them. That doesn't mean that they have to take out the loan. If they take out the loan, they have to do additional paperwork. It just means that, yeah, they are going to take it. And the same thing with work. If they accept it, that's great. If not, then nothing's going to happen to that. But again, if you decline them and want free money, the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. So just a couple of tips. Special circumstances, again, it's going to have to be a separate letter to each of the schools your student's looking at. FAFSA's black and white. Income and information, there's no adjustments on there. The schools are the only ones that can make those adjustments. So make sure that you have the documentation to provide to the school. They'll keep it in the student's file. Overall points, just make sure you read the instructions. I know, hey, I'm guilty of it too. We tend to like, yeah, okay. And then you start, and it's like, oh. Every year, the FAFSA has to be recompleted. They will send you a renewal. A lot of these things will be populated. You'll have to update. We all age a year, so you have to increase the age of the older parent. You may have moved, things change, and of course the income will be changing. And then these are different websites that will have additional information for you. Every one of our schools is required by law to have what we call a net price calculator. You'll put in some information. It'll give you a rough idea of what you'd be entitled to at that particular school. I'm kind of not a fan of it, only because my West Coast students, I don't want them to be like, oh, I can't afford to go there. It's like, no. I'll work with them. So that's basically it. And there was a lot of information. I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I just think it's important for you to see it realistically, to be able to ask the questions that need to be asked, and to have a good understanding of what's going to be taking place over the course of the next 4 years.
Do you have a copy of this slide up?
I can send it.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes for public questions, and then we always want to be mindful of people who needed to leave by 9. So I don't know if you're able to, but we'll all be here afterwards till whenever you have your questions answered. Hopefully we can answer them if she's not here. But 5 minutes.
If you don't complete the FAFSA, or does that make you ineligible for other aid like the merit and the?
Merit should have nothing. Merit normally, 99% of the time, has nothing to do with FAFSA.
It's still considered like
Absolutely.
maybe you didn't get
Absolutely.
aid when you're older children.
Right, but again, you need to find out from the schools, do they require a form to be completed? It probably is not that,
Okay.
but they may have a form.
I read that the presentation will be available for everybody later. Okay.
FAFSA opens October 1st, but when's the due date? When does it close?
Well, you know what, I say by Thanksgiving, that you've got to submit it, because again, you're looking for grant money. If you're only looking for the loan, you have up until March 31st of 2019.
Okay.
But the sooner the better, because again, the wells at the colleges of free money, they kind of run dry. So you want to make sure that you're, so by Thanksgiving.
Okay, but all colleges have the same ending date, March.
Well, the federal government has the same ending date. What you need to do is you have to look at their websites to see what their deadlines are.
We've been solicited by a few people that claim to be finders of scholarship money. I know this is for a little cottage industry. Do you recommend that people use those? Do you think it's a scam? Do you think it's?
You can do it yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
the World Wide Web. I mean, there's so many resources out there. And then if you're an ambiance, you do have a list of scholarships that students can apply for. And the parents have access to that to see what's available.
So it's not your impression that people, like, they
No. I mean,
okay.
anybody that's looking for money to do it. Actually, to be honest with you, any school, if you call them and ask them, can you help me fill it out? They should help you. Are they going to be happy? No, because I got 1,000 more things to do. But they should help you.
And about the free money thing, I just want to this just came to my mind, but I've always been told, working as a counselor, like, you should never pay for free money, and I always remember that, like a little saying, so.
Great. So true. Anybody else? Excellent. Oh,
With the FAFSA, you mean your tax return. So a lot of I'm looking also for a child who's going to this school who's not from this country. So a lot of the stuff that meets the FAFSA, he cannot apply for, correct? Right. But the other merit and stuff he can.
if the student is an eligible non-citizen, they would have to have an alien registration number. They can apply for financial aid. They will have to provide that information to the school.
In reference to athletic, you had said the coach brings it to admissions and if they don't qualify academically, they don't. But there's something in index where, right, they can pull them in with below the academic.
That,
Yeah, so, I'm a little bit, I dabble in the NCAA stuff, but this is, colleges do say what Corinne said, and that is that you have to be academically eligible. The coach can go in and say, this is my blue chip athlete, and I really want this athlete, and that will give them a better chance if they're a little bit below what is the norm for that school, but the admissions has to admit them. So students shouldn't like sit back and say, oh, you know, that it's okay, I don't meet their standards, but the coach is going to fight for me, because sometimes the coach will lose that fight.
so they don't have to admit them.
They don't have to admit them, right?
One question. My kids are a couple of years away from college, but is there like some place you can go to figure out based off of your income and your assets and all that kind of stuff, like kind of ballparkish what you might be available? Is it that kind of?
The one, the FAFSA forecaster would be a good one, and then again, you can go to any one of our schools and fill it in. But I would probably, in that case, go to FAFSA number 4 caster.
And that, I was gonna ask a similar question, just because you said the financial aid packages are not issued until after you're
Accepted.
Accepted.
Right.
But when you're looking at colleges and trying to figure out where you go, that forecaster should help give us an idea.
And that will only give you federal and state. That won't give you institutional. Institutional would have to be done through each of the different schools. However, I mean, if you're talking about a 9th grader, they don't have 10th and 11th grade GPAs yet. So if you went in as a freshman and it goes, oh yeah, you'd be eligible for $20,000, yet now you're filling it out officially and your student's GPA is plummeted, you're not going to get anything. But it told me I could get money back when they were freshmen. It doesn't work that way. Just gives you a rough idea.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can go to like individual questions at this point, because I know a lot of people have to leave. Thank you so much.